Hello and welcome to the Too Much Apparently podcast. If you're new here, this is a podcast for the deeply feeling, overthinking, emotionally overloaded humans who've been told they're too much apparently. And if you're back, thanks for choosing to sit with us again.
We're Alice and Carly, two therapists who are also just sensitive weirdos trying to make sense of life, healing, and our own brains. This isn't a professional advice podcast. It's more like the messy, honest conversations that happen when you finally feel safe enough to say what you're really thinking.
This space is for people like us, the ones who've been called too sensitive, too serious, too emotional, too intense, and have spent way too long believing that it's true.
Okay, on with the episode.
Today we're talking about being too sensitive to run a business.
This one's for anyone who's ever thought, I don't think I'm cut out for this.
Because running a business can feel loud, fast, pushy, and sometimes a bit icky.
Especially if you're someone who cares deeply about people, about ethics, about doing things the right way.
We're talking about the tension between authenticity and self-promotion and what it's like to build something when your nervous system isn't built for hustle culture.
Let's get into it.
So why do you think running a business feels so overwhelming for sensitive people?
Oof, going straight in there with the big question. I think running a business is overwhelming, full stop. I think anyone who owns a business will say that it's really tricky and there's so many different hats that you have to wear and different plates that you have to juggle, that it is difficult and overwhelming to run a business. But I also think there is a perception that running a business requires a certain type of personality. I think if you were to say to somebody, think of a business owner, the person, the image, the character, the personality, I think that would come to their mind. Probably wouldn't be a more sensitive, deep thinking, introverted person. You would kind of think the opposite of that.
Who do you think of? Who actually pops into your head? Do you have a specific person?
I don't have a specific person, but I have an image.
Right. I get Alan Sugar.
Oh, do you? Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. Yeah, but it says a lot actually, because the image that came into my mind, and I don't even like to admit this is the case, but it's the case. The image in my mind, firstly, they were a man.
Yeah.
They were white.
Mm-hmm.
They were older in age.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like I'm describing Alan Sugar.
Yeah.
They're extroverted. They're in a suit.
Yep.
There's a sense of power and dominating, a ruthlessness, charismatic, gift of the gab. Yeah, that's the kind of the image I think that came into my mind, which is the opposite of the image that would come into my mind talking about sensitive, deep feeling, maybe more quiet or introverted people.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I kind of share that like why is it a man? But it is. It is a man. And what I'd probably add to your list is has no time for people's emotions, no time for their own emotions, no time for anyone else's emotions.
Yeah, this is a place of work.
Yeah.
Leave your problems at the door.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think when you apply this imagination exercise to all sorts of roles that people might play in the world, it highlights your biases, it highlights the stereotypes, highlights your unconscious biases that you're not even aware of, and then the ones that are more obvious. It can be a useful exercise to show you where that plays out in day-to-day life and to challenge that, of course.
Yeah.
But in relation to this episode, it challenges what we think of when we think of what it means to be a person running a business, how we maybe think that we should be compared to what we think we should be based on said biases and stereotypes, versus how we actually are, and then how we feel about how we actually are.
Yeah. And I don't know if you said this in what you said. So you said about how we think we should be based on biases. And then I think there's that extra tension of how we think we should be according to our values as well, and the tension between those two things. And I think being therapists in business, this is a particular struggle that perhaps other business owners might not have. They might. But yeah, I think the thing that came up for me is about the vulnerability of being a business owner, that it just feels like a fundamentally vulnerable thing to do, to be like, right, I'm going to start this thing. And I don't know what the stats are, but I think it's quite high for a new business to fail.
Mm-hmm.
So there's risk in it anywhere. But I think being a therapist in business, one of the things that I've found really hard is I'm essentially selling myself.
Yes.
Like it's not like I've got a bunch of techniques and tools that I do. I'm, it's me. I'm essentially, especially as a relational therapist, I'm essentially selling a relationship with me,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
therapeutic relationship with me. And that is an incredibly vulnerable thing to do. So if I think about being sensitive to rejection, that's an enormous thing. You know, that was part of why I mentioned on the last episode, I had a bit of a breakdown when I set up my private practice. But, you know, standing up there and going, I can help you fix your life, like it feels like a massive statement, right? I don't think I'd word it like that now, but
I just love the idea of you changing your wording on your website to purchase a relationship with me.
but then that's hard. But then that's like, and that's part of the struggle as well. Is like, how do you market something in a culture that doesn't value the things that I feel like this isn't a very straightforward way of saying it, but I think if you tell people what therapy is, they're not going to be interested in it. Nobody going to therapy is like, right, I want to have a relationship with somebody. Like that's just not why people go to therapy. Most of the time, or for a lot of people, I think they are coming for the tools and the techniques. And the tools and the techniques can be helpful, but I think they often are then a sticking plaster over what's really underneath. But another thing that I find really difficult about being a business owner is the constant change, is the constant changing. So markets changing, whether that's like the cost of living and prices going up. So having to put my prices up to cover those rising costs, or like the constant changing of algorithms and what you need to do to get noticed. And that just can be so exhausting. There's so many things, especially as a sole trader, there's so many hats that you wear that it can be really exhausting to be on top of all of it. You know, I'm thinking about ethics, changing cultural awareness, new research, laws changing, AI being part of the picture and how we encourage people to do that safely. There's finance, tax laws, all of that stuff. You've got to be on top of it, as well as being emotionally well to be there for your clients.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it takes a lot, and a lot of really. I think this fits with the episode about being intentional, about the need to really intentionally make decisions about how you're going to run your business. So for me, that's around carefully planning how I have my hours, thinking about when I'm going to take leave, trying to do things as much as possible in batches so I'm not constantly switching between different tasks and things like that. I'm sure you've got loads of ideas
Oh,
about
yeah.
how to do that.
Yeah. All sorts of things that I've had to, yeah, learn on the job. And that's still very much learning on the job. But that really highlighted how much we're working with, how much we have to think about. Coming from being a nurse into private practice, I'm really passionate about people who are in the helping professions, but people who are in the helping professions and go on to run a private practice. That's something I'm talking about more and more because I feel like there are different intersections. There's running a business as a sensitive person, whatever that business might be. And then there's running a business in the helping professions and the different added complexities that come in when, to put it bluntly, like when you help heal people, you know,
Yeah.
whatever that is, when you're helping to work with someone's health and well being, whatever that looks like, there are always going to be additional complexities over selling a product.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I find interesting is no matter what type of business we're talking about, we're looking at what it is about being a sensitive person and whether that makes running a business harder or not. And also, interestingly, how many sensitive and especially neurodivergent people end up running their own businesses
Yeah.
because actually being in an employed position is quite difficult. Yeah, I could make this like a three-parter. I'm very passionate about this. I have so much to say.
I think it's really good that you have so much to say. And I think it's really important that you have so much to say. I think there's so much marketing advice out there that is not helpful for these kinds of businesses.
Mm-hmm.
I would say for any business actually, but
Yeah.
but especially for our kinds of businesses. But I think it's really important that there are people like you that really do have this strong interest in how do we do this ethically and how do we do this sustainably.
Yeah, definitely. And as you mentioned, that feels like it's in line with our values because a lot of advice out there may conflict with your values, but then that's hard when it feels like everything is saying this is how you should do it, this is the best way to do it. So if we were to take marketing, for example, I don't mean to make a sweeping statement here, but I would imagine for a good proportion of sensitive, deep feeling people, they are likely to have perhaps a strong moral compass and be very much aware of what they feel is ethical and what they're comfortable with or not. Now, let's think about marketing your business. If we consider that the majority of marketing is psychological manipulation, how do I use your own psychology against you to get you to buy a thing? Who cares if it's even helpful to you or not? All I care is that you buy it. Anything that you read about, if you're just to read like Marketing 101 for a business, is about how do we convince people to buy what you're selling? Well, if you're a sensitive person, particularly if you're working as a therapist, as a dietitian, as a physio, the idea of convincing somebody to buy something from you by using their own psychology against you to trick people into buying it, pressure people into buying it, have a countdown, all the classic tools and stuff that people use, that is going to make you feel so icky.
Yeah.
Even as I'm describing it, I'm like, no, I can't do that. I can't do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's just one example of the types of advice you'll see around marketing and how that might really strongly conflict with what you feel comfortable and not comfortable doing. But then what do I do when there is a reason that everybody or the big companies are marketing in that way? Because it works, it gets them sales. But if we don't agree with that and we want to market in a way that feels more ethical to us, how do we then do that, but still get sales to support our business? And that's just one area that I can just think of off the top of my head.
Yeah, and I think it's a really important one. And until I was a business owner, I had no idea that there are people making millions of pounds coaching other people to earn money in this way, to put that pressure on, to do the countdown, the time limited thing, buy it now or you'll miss out, utilizing FOMO. Overcoming objections I would say, is a standard module in any marketing course, is specifically thinking ahead what objections your person might have and how you can convince them that that actually is not, that there's a good reason why they should still buy.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, I think that kind of marketing doesn't show, I'm just going to be quite strong about this, doesn't show any respect for the person that they are trying to take money from.
Yeah.
And I think it's even more the case when the people buying are neurodivergent and might miss some of that manipulation, might struggle with impulsivity and, resisting the urge to buy something. Yeah, it just, yeah, really icky, really don't like it. And I think one of the problematic things is they can often present it as, so you said before, this is, the best way to sell, but I think they can even present it as like, this is the only way. Like, if you don't do this, forget it, your business is going to fail.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important that, if you are a business owner that's listening, that's not true.
No.
You don't have to do that. You don't have to do any of that.
No, you don't. There are other ways around it. And equally, there might be things that other people do that are successful and might bring them in more money. But that's then also where you have to make decisions for yourself in terms of what you feel you can live with and what feels right for you. But we're perhaps there talking about larger sums of money. But I think just being a solopreneur in your own business, I think you can absolutely earn just as much as anybody else.
Yeah.
Taking a different tact. Yeah, interestingly, on the neurodivergent part, I can't remember if it was an article or if I was in a group with a lot of neurodivergent people sharing their experiences. So take this with a pinch of salt. But I saw something once about neurodivergent people might not be very good at picking up on manipulation from people, but many were saying they're excellent at picking up on marketing manipulation, which I thought was really interesting. But yeah, but just to say that, but I think you made a good point about like the impulsivity side of things, about invoking fear of missing out. You're never going to get this offer ever again. Yeah, and just making people feel rubbish about themselves so that they have to have this thing
Yeah.
and they have to have it now.
Yeah. That's a huge one, isn't it? That is a
Mm.
huge one. I think that creates so many issues in our society, but that is what people are pumped, isn't it? Left, right, and center. The message that they're not okay in some way, so that
Yeah.
they'll buy all these various things.
Can you imagine if the marketing of a therapist, I'm trying to think of what it would look like, but if it was something like, you think your life is rubbish? Yeah, it really is rubbish. Come and see me. And I'll make it not rubbish, you know.
Yeah.
Just imagine if we were to market in the
Yeah.
same way that other people market. I mean, gosh, even just saying that out loud made me want to like, don't say that. But it's a really good example of you have to do it differently, either because of the type of business that you have or because of the type of character and person that you are. You have to feel good about how you are doing things and the decisions that you are making
Yeah.
in your business. I feel like
Yeah.
because we have so much to say, we can like just really go around the houses on this. So I
Mm.
kind of want to bring it back a little bit, but why do we think sensitive and or neurodivergent people might find themselves wanting to start or starting their own business?
Well, I think for me, it's about control, and I
Mm.
think for lots of other people, it's that struggling with the politics of being in a workplace or struggling with the practicalities of being in a workplace, being able to choose your own start time, end time, holidays, things like that. I think there's a lot more flexibility in it. I think there's also something about creativity or self expression. So, part of the reason why I work in private practice is I think it's really important to work in the way that I work, and I'm not willing to work according to how somebody else thinks is the right way to work. Yeah, I think there are lots of reasons, but that's what comes to the top of my head. What do you think's
Yeah.
missing from that?
Yeah, I think the same kind of things. I think control is really important. I think the reason that control is important is because many of us find that we need more space. We need more moments of rest. We might need to have control over when we take time off. I remember as a nurse having to book time off for the next summer, like the year before, to know when you would need it off, or that there's zero chance. And just the fact that you need to ask somebody permission a year in advance to have the week off that you want to have off in your own life. So weird to me how that's just accepted as the norm and no one really questions it. But yeah, needing to have that control and to set things up in a way that suits you, to not be beholden to somebody else. And struggling with corporate politics and red tape is a massive one. And feeling like you can be doing a better job,
Yeah.
but you don't feel like you are because of all those different constraints, being short staffed, being restricted, having certain tick boxes to do that don't really make sense, but you've got to do it, knowing that actually you feel like you could be more fulfilled doing it by yourself.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you said something a while ago now about the way that corporations can state their values, and they say that they practice these values, but actually in practice, it's not really there.
No.
And I find that really frustrating. I think being able to work according to my values is a really important part. It's a massive benefit of being self employed.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So there's lots of benefits for sensitive people to run their own business.
Mhm.
But of course, we were talking about why it might feel like it's too hard for a sensitive person to run their own business.
Mm.
So, yeah, what's the flip side of that that can make people doubt whether they're cut out to run a business?
Yeah. I think the two big things for me are the exhaustion that can come with it because you are the only one.
Mm.
I know some people will have like a VA or will do things for them, but then there's the cost of that. So again, I think there can be a privilege thing in there. If you're working class, if you haven't got family support, if you're relying on your income, then probably you're going to have to do a lot of things yourself. That can be exhausting. And I think the other thing for me is about that tension between And I think particularly with helping professions as well, I don't think we see people talking about this in the same way, but that tension between wanting to help people and having to charge money for it is a really tricky one. And so, and some other, perhaps some other things around marketing that can feel unethical or icky as well.
Yeah, they're all great points. There's also the added element of so many helpers are, what's the terminology? So many healers are wounded healers.
Yeah.
Yeah, so many helpers are wounded healers. So at the same time, a lot of people might be in these sorts of roles and because of their own experiences, because of wanting to help other people, and also may still be being driven by their own trauma responses. So it's one thing to run a business, but it's a whole other thing to run a business as a conflict avoidant people pleaser who is also sensitive, fears rejection, and
Yeah.
anything else you might tag on the end of. Yeah, I think it's difficult to run a business because of all of those things. And they're the things that can make it really difficult or make us feel like we're not cut out for it. So if we're struggling to charge what we need to charge, so we're having to see more people, create more products because we can't charge what we need to be charging, then we've got to do more, which means we're more likely to struggle to do all of the things, which means we're more likely to burn out and be tired all the time. If we struggle to charge for cancellations, so we have to take more work on, it's so easy to get to a point where it feels like I'm not cut out for this.
Yeah. There's
But
a lot of really confronting decisions that you have to make, I think. And I think another thing that I find really hard is that I don't think it's possible to feel, maybe that's a bit over the top, but it feels really hard to feel like you can make the right decision about when it comes to these kind of values clashes. And I think particularly in the helping professions as well, people are in pain. And I think generally people that are pulled towards these kinds of jobs and running these kinds of businesses want to help people. That is their motivation, is that they want to help people. So it's really easy to be like, well, I'll keep my prices low and I won't, oh, even though it says in my contract that I've got a 48-hour or a 7-day cancellation period, oh, I won't charge it this time. It can be really hard. I often find myself feeling like I'm holding the responsibility for the whole structure of capitalism. But the reality is we live in a capitalist society, and to some extent I have to live according to that. I can't offer my services for free.
yes, yeah. Oh, there's just so many elements, isn't there? But that's a really good point. That's something that you and I have said about, I believe there should be free access to therapy. So when I very first started, and this is something I see all the time, is people saying, "Oh, I want my services to be accessible. I want to be accessible. You know, I don't want there to be anyone that can't see me because of finances." Trust me, I started there because
Yeah.
that is what I believe. It takes a long time to realize that you can't shoulder the weight of believing therapy is accessible on your own individual one person ran business when you have your own bills to pay, that actually that can't be our burden to bear. But it's difficult when you believe that. So it's something that feels incongruent with your values because you're charging this amount of money. You've got these policies in place that feel like, strong business boundaries. And yet you believe that people should have easier access to this. It can feel incongruent, but I believe it's true to both believe that therapy should be accessible and for you to not have your business in a way that's fully accessible because you can't afford to.
And great if you can afford to. Like,
Yes.
if you have got family wealth or some other kind of wealth that means that you can offer a lower fee, great, no issue with that. But I imagine that this is likely to come up more strongly for people that have grown up working class, have grown up in poverty, have grown up struggling for money, don't have people to turn to when they, when they need therapy, things like that. Like, I really struggled. So when I started my practice, I set my fee at the same as what my therapist had charged me. And when I put my prices up above what my 23-year-old single mother self struggled to afford, still £35 an hour is where I started, I really struggled to move past that. I felt like it was betraying myself. I felt like I was betraying everybody else in that kind of position. And ultimately, I had to accept that I can't carry the burden of that as a single practitioner who's not in a financial position to do that. I hope that in time I will be able to generate enough money to be able to offer different kinds of things for people. But at the moment, the reality is because of my situation and because I'm neurodivergent, and that means that my energy depletes faster, I can only see so many people, and therefore I need to have a higher fee and then have to market to that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard. It is hard. And even as I'm saying it, like I'm wanting to cringe, I'm wanting to put the words back in my mouth. And yeah, it's tough. It is tough.
Yeah,
But I think it's
it,
a
it
really
is tough.
important conversation.
It is a really important conversation. And it's something I'm much less apologetic for now. Like, I kind of still am, but definitely less so. Because, yeah, I just think it's different. If you're a business owner, yes, you're wearing lots of different hats, but you're a business owner. But if you're in the helping professions, and particularly if you're a therapist and your work is based on a relationship with somebody, business and therapy almost like don't mix.
No.
And so it's also important to know that actually you're going to have to separate that out. What you believe as a therapist, as a person in the world, might not be conducive to having a business. So you're going to have your business values and the way in which you need to do things, and accept that some of that will be in conflict with how you wish you could do things. But unless your circumstances suddenly drastically change, you can't. And that is where I think investing in business coaching is really helpful. I know it's something that you and I have both done, been in business coaching groups together. And I remember speaking about this so much, and my business coach at the time saying, you can't do charity until you can afford to do charity. Because I was putting so much time into having charitable aims on the side and having much lower fee spaces, but then also talking about this is too much and I'm burnt out and I can't do this. And that was a really helpful recognition that it's okay to want to have charitable aims or have lower fee spaces or do a free course or group, but you've got to reach the point where you can afford to do that first. And that was a bit of okay. It's not that I have to scrap my values. I can still want to do those things, but I've got to reach a point where I can afford to do those things because I need to take care of me first.
Yeah, I think that's really important, that the recognition of the cost of, I guess, the more therapeutic value side, or the, I suppose I'd think of it as like more socialist values is, yeah, if you're not running your business in a sustainable way, you're probably going to get ill.
Yeah.
So then you're not even going to be there for your clients. That's not great. If you don't get ill, it's quite possible that you end up feeling resentful. I've made the mistake before of reducing fees to people who then repeatedly went on like fancy holidays, and I couldn't even afford a holiday at all. And
Yeah.
that was really tough, and I learned a really important lesson doing that. And I think also there's just something about what are we modeling for the people that we're working with. We're in the business of living well, of looking after ourselves, of breaking unhelpful patterns like that. So if we're trying to support other people to do that, but then in our own business are not setting boundaries and holding boundaries, are not willing to do uncomfortable things that we need to do to make sure our own needs are met. And one of the things that I always come back to is nobody ever goes in Tesco's and says this should be free.
Yeah.
No one ever does that.
Yes. Or no one goes to the gym and says, look, I've been signed up for 6 months and I've not come, so can I have all my money back? But it does just feel different when a relationship is involved.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because as a therapist, my relationship with my clients is not just transactional. I care about them.
Yeah.
Feel cared for by me. So if they
Yeah.
feel cared for, but they're ill and I have to charge for that, of course that feels uncomfortable, and of course that might bring up difficult feelings because
Yeah.
it highlights that it's a professional relationship
Yeah.
and it's a business. So of course it brings stuff up, and it's okay that things get brought up. But it's how then we then handle that. Like, do we then go into guilt? Do we then go into shame? Do we feel like we've done something bad? Do we feel like we've done something wrong? Because yeah, as I say, the people at the gym will not be thinking they're doing anything wrong for not refunding someone who doesn't come to the gym.
Yeah. Yeah. You bring up something really important there. And I went to a building your own private practice thing in the months before I started my private practice. And the person running that was saying, she was talking about what you pay for. And she's saying, you pay for my time, you pay for my experience, you pay for my knowledge. You don't pay for my care. My care is there no matter what. And I just
Yeah.
thought that's such a nice way of putting it. And that is absolutely how it feels. Like if somebody can't afford to work with me or yeah, stops being able to afford to work with me or whatever, decides they don't want to, that doesn't stop. Like
Yeah.
even years later, there's still people, there are people that I worked with when I was a student training to do this that I still think, oh, how are
Yeah.
they doing now?
You never not think about that.
No, the care is genuine. The care is, and I think it feels a little bit confusing to me, but I think it often comes up like, oh, you're only doing it for the money, or people's family and friends can often say to clients like, oh, that's a lot of money, imply that you might be taking advantage of them, or is it worth it, or all that kind of thing. Money brings up a lot of stuff, doesn't it?
Mm.
But yeah, no, I don't think you can do this job if you're just doing it for the money. I don't think
No.
you can. I don't think you would. I think there are lots more lucrative careers you could go into if money was what you were after. Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, there certainly is.
Yeah.
But it also highlights the difference between the types of roles that we could be doing versus what we find ourselves doing. And one of the things you mentioned before was about capitalism and how particularly sensitive people struggle to work under capitalism, which is then there's an irony in then owning your own business, especially if you would describe yourself as maybe anti capitalist and run a business. But there are still different ways in which we can do this. Like capitalistic business culture prioritizes profit, often profit over people, but profit, continuous growth and competition with other businesses wanting to outdo and beat and be the best. Whereas where we can then struggle in business is when actually we don't value those things. We value the care, we value the ethics, we value fairness, we value not doing harm, and sustainability. And so it is difficult when those things directly seem to go against how we think businesses should be run and then what we think that we should be doing in our businesses or how we should be doing it in our businesses. Yeah, so I think that can bring up a lot of discomfort in a lot of different ways. And because of that, that's where we can end up struggling and feeling like, oh, maybe I am too sensitive to run a business. My challenge for anyone that has thought that or thinks that, well, I'm going to caveat it actually, because I would absolutely be lying if I said I've done so much work around this and I no longer question if I'm too sensitive to run a business, because that would not be true. I often think, no, actually, the question isn't, am I cut out for this? It is around sustainability. So that is still there for me. But at the same time, I would still question for anyone that's ever thought, am I too sensitive to run a business? Am I not cut out for this? That the very first thing to maybe look at, perhaps it's less about me as a person and more about how am I doing things?
Yeah.
And starting to look there first, because there may very well be things that you can change, things that you can do differently that might be difficult, that might be challenging, but may no longer make it feel like you're not cut out for this.
Yeah. Yeah. So what are the decisions that you're making that might make your business sustainable or not?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or more or less sustainable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but where you can still feel good doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. And I think there can be some difficult things that you might need to look at in order to do that. I think it's so common for rescuer type people to end up in these kinds of professions.
Mhm.
So to have to look at where that drive might not be so altruistic, that it might be, fulfilling a need in you to feel good about yourself, to be helping people.
Mhm.
So to be able to put your prices up, you have to. there is a degree to which you have to accept people are going to use different words, but the word that's coming up for me is selfish. I've no doubt that some people think that I'm selfish. I have a high fee. Loads of people are going to be really uncomfortable with my fee. I just have to be okay with that. I just have to know that it's the right decision for me. And, the same with making decisions around cancellation policies and things like that. My therapist has just implemented a policy where you pay whether you go or not. You only don't pay when she's not there. And I
Yeah.
know lots of people will have strong feelings about that.
Yeah. And quite a lot of people have that policy.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And yeah, there are some really difficult decisions, but I think if you are in a helping profession, it's so important. It's like that putting your own air mask on first when you're on an airplane.
Yes.
It's like
Yeah.
put your own air mask on first, because if you burn out, you help nobody. You
Hmm.
don't help anybody. And if you are living in a way that doesn't sustain you, probably going to come through in the work. It's
Yeah.
probably going to come through in the work, and that's really uncomfortable. But yeah, it's important.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Also true. Also true.
Mm.
I think other messages that can be difficult as well, if you operate with a sensitive nervous system in business, is looking at what you need to do in order to make a business successful and then holding yourself to that same standard. So, one of the things that I've struggled with is comparing myself to other people in similar businesses to me and seeing like how much output they've got. Like they're doing so much and they seem to constantly be pushing out new things, new things, new things. And I'm like, how on earth do they have the time to do that? And sometimes even talking to people and they're doing their work in the day and then working on building other things in the evenings and at weekends where there's not much boundary between clocking on and clocking off. And then it making me feel like, oh, I should be doing that. Or, oh, I'm a failure then because I can't do that. And that's often backed up by what makes a business successful. Someone who works really, really hard and puts all of the hours into it, things
Yeah.
like that. So it fuels that kind of belief. And the other one that I struggle with is if you want to have a successful business that grows, say yes to every and any opportunity that comes your way.
Yeah.
I thought that, okay, I have to say yes then to whatever opportunity comes my way. And that is so difficult as a sensitive person in the world to say yes to any opportunity that comes your way. So it's so hard to have to deconstruct those beliefs and recognize that actually you do need to do it differently and that is okay. And yeah, it might mean that you get somewhere slower. And trust me, the high achiever in me does not like that one bit. But like you said, otherwise, well, I might not get there at all because I will have so burnt out that I'll think this job isn't for me and leave. So actually, I can't say yes to every opportunity that comes my way. What I need to
Right.
do is learn how to say yes to certain opportunities that come my way.
Yeah.
What are the ones to say yes to? What are the ones to say no to? And recognizing that, yeah, if I want my business to grow, I am going to have to find time to do things outside of my normal client hours. But that can't be working on something every evening or every weekend or just pushing through so that then I can get more time back. That's just not how that's going to work for my sensitive body and brain.
Yeah, I think it really has to be sustainable, doesn't it? And for me, a big part of something being sustainable is being in line with my values. That if you just said yes to everything, you could end up exhausting so much energy on stuff that just isn't right for you. And I completely share that, looking at other people in our field that are writing books and doing courses and all different kinds of cool things. But I also get that when I look at you sometimes. I'm just going to say that. And also, I've no doubt that some people look at us and think that here we are doing this podcast. And yeah, I think that I just want to be careful not to miss what we do, because it's not like
Yeah.
you're not just a therapist. Like you do your groups as well. You do this podcast. I know you're working on other stuff. Yeah, that there is stuff going on. But yeah, I do get that. I was just listening to a podcast earlier and thinking about, and I was thinking like, why haven't I been on TV? Why haven't I written a book? And I'm like, right, when I get home, I'm going to write an outline for a book and I'm going to send it to Carly and I'm going to be like, right, we're going to write a book. And then I'm like, oh, but if you want to write a book, you need to have a massive social media platform these days. So how are we going to do that? And like, there's just so much, isn't there? There's just so much. And oh, do I have time for more things at the moment? Probably not.
Oh, yeah, that sounded like exactly my own head.
Yeah, yeah, no
Yeah,
problem.
I once wrote down on a piece of paper all the things you have to do and hold as a business owner, and I literally filled the entire page, a bit like a word dump of all of the things. And I was able to fill an entire page of all the things that you have to do and keep on top of, and the roles you have to have, and the different roles you have to do when you run a business. And just seeing it all together is mind blowing.
Yeah, yeah. I just want to give a little shout out to anyone who's feeling massively behind on anything. Like
Yes.
if you're behind on your notes, you're not alone. Yeah, there's a lot to keep on top of.
Yeah, and if you said 2 years ago, oh, I'm going to start doing this, and you've not started to do it yet, we're with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Or if, like me, you've started loads of things all at the same time, and now you're just in a whirlpool of where do I even start with any of this?
Yeah, or have stopped, start a lot of times,
Yeah.
or changed your niche 10 different times.
I
Yeah.
wouldn't swap it though. I wouldn't swap it. I feel like that's really, I really want that to be, I really want people to hear that there are lots of struggles and it is really hard, but I wouldn't swap it. I love what I do.
Yeah.
Even with the challenges in there, it's such a rewarding job and I love it. And I feel so lucky to be able to do it. And I recently took 3 weeks off, but I came back from those 3 weeks and just filled with excitement. Like I was excited to see my clients again and filled with lots of gratitude for what I get to do.
Mm-hmm.
It wanes when I have to do my tax return and I've got to figure out
Yes.
making tax digital and whatever else. But yeah.
Yeah, there are things that can make it wane for sure. But you also just highlighted how important rest and taking care of yourself is because it changes your relationship with your work and how it feels when you're doing your work. And even though I am very much still learning about how to do things differently or what else I might need to do to make what I do truly sustainable, I know there are more changes that certainly need to be made over time, but I also wouldn't change it.
Hmm.
And I don't know what the answer is going to be for everyone because maybe some people will start a business and feel like actually it isn't right for them and it doesn't suit them and how they are in the world. But for you and I, and perhaps for other sensitive people, the answer to the question of too sensitive to run a business is I don't believe that that's true.
No, and I think it would be good if more sensitive people went into business and challenged the whole marketing thing and
Yeah.
if there were more people marketing ethically because you don't have to do all of that stuff. It is perfectly possible to market ethically. I really there's a guy called Tad Hargraves who does, I think his business is called Marketing for Hippies, but his whole thing is ethical marketing. And what he talks about is the message that you're trying to give to people is not like, this is amazing and it's going to change your life and you definitely need this one thing. The conversation that you're trying to have is like, this is what I can offer. Is it a good fit for you? And a no is as good as a yes. I don't want to convince people to work with me, but what I do want to get better at is saying, this is how I can help you. These are the kinds of things that I can do, and really allowing myself to be heard so that people can really just, make that ethical decision of, yes, this is what I want, or no, it isn't.
Yeah, well, that sounds like the difference between learning how to sell yourself, which just instantly feels icky, versus learning how to get good at explaining what it is that you do. And
Yeah.
if you work on that, the right people will find you and the right people will come. You know,
Yeah.
you don't need to convince anybody. You don't need to sell yourself
It
to
just feels
somebody.
it just feels gross. It just feels gross and just hugely unethical to, yeah, convince somebody to pay me. That's not what I'm here to do.
I think
Mm.
learning how to show up authentically as yourself and improve our comfort with being visible and improve our confidence in talking about what it is that we do and how it can support someone and how it can help someone, the selling part takes care of itself.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I think when it comes to selling, one of the most helpful things that I've ever heard is, because I think you can often hear, like, who are you to be putting yourself out there like this? Like, who are you to be saying that you can do any of this? But I think it's really helpful to think of it the other way around. Like, who are you to hide your gifts from the world? Like, you've done all of this training, you've got all of these personal qualities. There's so much that you can offer that's good to the world. Who are you to hide it away?
Yeah, I love that. It'll be nice to do another business related episode at some point.
Yeah. That sounds like a great idea. There's definitely more to explore on this one, isn't there?
Yeah, okay. If you've ever felt like you're too sensitive to run a business, like you care too much, feel too much, think too much,
maybe that's not your weakness. Maybe that's exactly what makes your work meaningful.
you're not failing at business. You're trying to do it in a way that doesn't cost you your values or yourself.
Next time, we're diving into Too Nostalgic to Let Go. We'll explore why sensitive people feel nostalgia so deeply and why that might actually be something to celebrate.
But for now, we'll leave you with this. What would your business look like if it was built around your nervous system and not against it? And what might change if success didn't mean pushing harder but doing things more gently?
That's all from us today. If this episode made you feel a bit less alone, the best way to help us reach more people is to subscribe, rate the podcast, and follow Too Much Apparently on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube.
Those simple clicks help other sensitive humans find us when they need it most. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon.